Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride.
You have some exciting news about the latest book from Strong Girl Publishing.
Yes, the latest book, Power Up by Stevie Lynn Smith, registered dietitian, and myself, is officially out now. I'm so stoked on this book. So it's a young woman's guide to sport nutrition. And yeah, if you have a young woman in your life, so age like I'd say 13 to 25, this is such an important resource both for them and I also think for parents and coaches. So definitely pick it up wherever books are sold.
Okay. It sounds like a very important book, and I know you both have been working hard on it, so congratulations on that, and we're excited.
Thanks, dear.
Okay. So, we don't have a lot else today. Things are rolling along, fall, etc. We can hash some of that out as we get through some of these questions, but yeah, let's get through these few questions.
Yeah, let's start with kind of the more, I'm going to say simpler one out of all of them, building up your home gym. Now, I feel like you have basically been like a beautiful mind level of like trying to figure out which plates we needed. Once we got our garage, we got to get a squat rack. We've always been a huge fan of the adjustable dumbbell, but actually the person who asked this question says they have one that they've been maxing out on for some exercises.
And two. So this is like, they're getting into like 100 pounds of dumbbell lifting here, 50 and 50.
Yeah, so adjustable dumbbells usually go up to like 52.5 pounds.
Sure. Yeah, there's a range. You can get lower and maybe a bit higher, but that's about the heaviest ones.
Now, I will say the hack that I found for adjustable dumbbells that I didn't really realize is when they're on the low end, you can increase by 2.5 pounds. So you can go from like 5 to 7.5 to 10 to 12.5. But after 20, it stops really happening. But the hack you showed me is that you can actually just adjust one side to be like a little lower and one side to be a little high. Like the sides don't actually have to perfectly match.
Yeah.
So it let me really dial in, because for overhead press, I don't really want to add 5 pounds at a time. Like that's a big jump. So that was like a huge unlock for me. And actually, I think it's kind of a cool one with overhead press, with any of those balance ones, to have it a little unbalanced, because it really forces some more core engagement. Just because you have like a slight, it's slightly off balance.
A little bit. Yeah. Maybe your wrist has to work a little harder there or something. But yeah, that's the idea. And so the question is, you're sort of you think you're starting to lift too much. These weights are getting too easy. And then what do you do? And so you could go down the pathway of like, now you do need to get a squat rack and a bar or a trap bar, or these things that are going to let you use more like plates with a barbell versus using dumbbells, which are those handheld things, or kettlebells would be another option. But even kettlebells, most people are going to end up like, this is a big weight to lift with one arm. So even a kettlebell, we have a 70-pound one, and it is fairly heavy to get moved around. I can goblet squat it, but to get it up below your chin is a little bit of an effort, especially for smaller people. So that is definitely something you could look at, is like a heavier kettlebell. Heavier than 52.5 would be an option. The other things that we've done in the past, like some of these like ankle weights, you can get them really cheap. Most people are selling. If you go on a buy and sell, you can get ankle weights, or just something like a Winners or those types of stores.
They're definitely your local free cycle type groups, but also, you know what I hate to say, Dollarama has them, like Dollar General, Family Dollar. A lot of those have like the 2 pound, 3 pound, 4 pound ones.
And not so much. I mean, you could put them on your ankles. Some people really like that. Some people with like hip stuff, sometimes it can actually be quite therapeutic.
Hey, that's all part of like the hot girl walk protocol these days.
I've seen more people using them. You do have to be careful with that stuff. But the reason you're getting these, they're actually really cheap ways, as Molly said, to add a pound or 2 pounds or whatever they happen to be. And they're very cheap relative to dumbbells or barbells or plates. So they are actually really nice ways to just add a tiny bit of weight, and you could put it on your wrist, or you could actually, they have straps, and most dumbbells, you could sort of find a place to strap it on, and it would be pretty safe. I mean, your results may vary, be careful. But that would be one quick way you could add a tiny bit of weight while you have those. But most people at home, I usually find, especially if you're getting up into, you have two 52.5s, a lot of people, you can go to something like a single leg, something like a lunge or a split squat, certainly a Bulgarian split squat. Most people are not going to do 100 and whatever that is, 105 pounds for that. So there is probably a bit more room in exercises that you can still make progress at home if you've maxed out something like a squat or something using these. The other thing that I often check is sort of form / range of motion. If you're only quarter squatting these dumbbells, then a more full range squat, something like the deadlifts, the Romanian deadlifts, like what type of range of motion are you using would be the other thing to check in. You see a lot of people, this is the classic gym thing. I can squat 400 pounds, but I go an inch down and come back up. That's not really the idea of the squat, right? You want to really work on range of motion, so you can drop the weight way back down and then build back up using a bit more full range of motion, whatever that means for you. And of course, check with your doctor and so forth. But that would be the idea. So if you do go to, I'm going to build out a big home gym. I like this power rack idea. I want to try and do back squats or something like this, some deadlifts. Then I would say what we did was we got a rack off of, used buy and sell. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't that expensive. And then same thing, we found a barbell, an Olympic barbell. You want to get a decent one, but they're not so expensive. And then we started getting plates, and the plates we ended up mostly buying new just because it was hard to find anything. And then, so we have a blog where we laid out the exact plates we got. So the sizes of the plates and the number of them.
And we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. But it was sort of related to what you're saying with the 2.5 jumps. It's sort of like a mathematical equation of like how many of each plate do you need so that you can do every possible combination. It's a little excessive to need every possible combination, but a lot of people will start, once you get into it, you do something like a starting strength program where it's a linear gains where you go the bar and then you go 47.5 and then you go whatever is after 47.5 is 50. And so to do that, because the barbell has two sides to it, you have to divide these up. So now you need 1.25 on each side, and then you need to do increments of that. So you need a 1.25 and then a 2.5 and then a 2.5 and a 1.25.
Or those handy dandy ankle weights that you just throw on the end there.
That's right. So I was really close actually to just going and getting another set of ankle weights and just dealing with it. Wouldn't have been a perfect 1.25, but it would have been like a 1 and a 1. And then you could do two of them on each side. And that would have been honestly like $10-20 cheaper.
Yeah. So, okay, that's sort of the plate thing. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. Now, is there anything else you would put on like the must get for a home gym as people are kind of thinking about this? I think a lot of people now understand that with their trainer set up in the winter, it's nice to have just something that...
Well, we could step back. And so our initial post was sort of like Gym 1.0 home gym. And this was more in the pandemic, but I think it's very relevant still. And we suggested maybe you get something like an adjustable dumbbell.
We still love the adjustable dumbbell. Like we have the home gym, and that is like, we have like the full squat rack. We have the room. I would have no interest in getting like a big rack of like all the dumbbells.
Yeah. So we do have, I do like sort of, it depends on your size, your strength, and what you're going to do. But we have two 20-pound dumbbells. We don't really use our 10 pounds. We have two 10s, but I don't think we really use them very often. I think I use them for like weights for the door, or I tie the dog to it sometimes.
Not in like a bad way, just in like a way if he wants to run away, he has to work it.
Yeah, it's a good way because he can actually drag it. He's 11 pounds of pure muscle, so he can
like
drag that
dog.
thing. But
yeah, he's a working dog.
But it lets him move around the yard a little bit, but I can chase him down when he's starting to get close to the road or whatever. So that's what we use the 10 pounds for. So needless to say, the 220 pounds, an adjustable dumbbell, we just have one, 52.5. We have a 70-pound kettlebell, which I think is a good thing. It's nice for swings. It is that like double size, in the kettlebell world, they sort of have a 35 and then a 70 approximately is sort of like the two standard sizes. There are obviously other sizes in between, but like those are sort of like the traditional ones, roughly. And then what do we do? Pull-up bar of some type?
I was going to say the pull-up bar, honestly, was like the biggest.
Mm-hmm. So we had a doorway pull-up bar. Now it's part of our power rack that we got, our squat rack.
Thank goodness, because frankly, like do it on a door you hate because it wrecks your door.
Yes. Yeah. And then the ab roller, which we like a lot of Dan John's work, and he uses a lot of ab roller, and you do need to be careful with ab rollers. But I actually think for a gimmicky sort of thing, it is actually like a nice little tool. And then we have a couple of bands, like the sideways walking bands and the band pull-apart bands. You can look those exercises up and just get appropriate bands for those. And then if you're someone who struggles with pull-ups, needs help with the pull-ups, then the one pull-up the band pull apart band may help with that, but you may require like some other, like a big green band or something, which is also handy for mobility exercises and so forth. So that's sort of the little thing. Most of those are going to fit in a pretty nice little box sort of area. But yeah, that's sort of like Gym 1.0. And then we have this next post. So we'll link to these two posts of what we would do if you did go to the power rack and the squat rack, that sort of stuff.
Love it. You're going to see us get super buff this winter.
Yeah, we'll see. That or injured, I guess, is the other option. Yeah. Yeah. No, so far it's going to work. I think I think I just finished the second month of my program here, so it's still going up. It's definitely hard. But yeah, it's been great. We've really enjoyed the home gym so far and the bigger weights. So we'll see what it means for cycling and running. But so far, I said to you, I had one of the strongest runs ago. I just felt really solid. Like the impacts weren't so bad, and I had actually been running less. So we'll see.
Thought you were going to say, I said to you, you're looking pretty good with these heavy squats. I'm noticing some good. But no, just talking about yourself. That's fine. Don't care. Wasn't looking for appreciation or anything.
Okay. I feel like you got a compliment today, so let's not push it. All right, next question.
Dealing with a declining threshold
across the off season, I think was this one.
Okay, across the off season. So I guess are we? I'm not sure where this question came from. So I guess, are we talking about like the psychological ramifications of a declining threshold just over an off season?
I think did reference that. Yeah.
Where it's traditionally it's going to go down a little bit if you're testing it throughout the off season, or are we talking about the physical? Because I think there's sort of two sides to this story.
I think this was more the mental side of it, and we get this question.
Stop looking.
We get a lot of this question. Stop looking, I guess, would be one way to think.
Stop testing.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's like it's supposed to happen, right? Like you're supposed to, if you're training across the year, there's going to be a little bit of drop. Now across the whole off season, that's probably not. You probably want to start seeing it coming back up at some point during the off season.
Well, I guess maybe what percentage are we talking about is like good to go down? Are we talking like if it goes below, like say if it drops more than like 10%, we've got like some kind of issue going on, or is it 20%? Like what would you categorize as like a reasonable drop, a like kind of predicted drop versus a like, oh, this is a sign that like something funky is going on?
Well, and this is where I think sometimes the physiologist, as much as I am a shoe lab test, is that what I do? Is that the word I'm looking for? I feel like we need a thing where I try and say words once an episode.
This is possibly one of those, like, I read the word when I was 8 and I don't know how to pronounce it. So for anyone listening, it's ESCHEW is what he's trying to say.
Sometimes I speak not so positively about lab tests, so VO2 tests, lactate tests, these type of things. There's a variety of reasons. You can go back through episodes. You can ask a future question, and we can talk about it again, I guess. But this would be a place where the lactate and the VO2 they don't really lie so much. Maybe you wouldn't get as far through the test if you weren't motivated. The problem with a field test, our classic 20-minute test, the Zwift ramp test, the 5-minute TT, the 2x8, whatever you do for your fitness testing on your bicycle, your field testing on your bicycle, it does require a bit of motivation. And
so pros and cons.
Yeah, and I always look at it more as a pro because I find out that you're not super motivated if you don't finish it, right? And a lot of times this time of year, that's more the situation. So what I'm saying is like, it probably isn't a physiological drop. It's more like a psychological drop. So what we found out is that like for some reason you're not performing quite as highly, but we're not super worried if it's October and your next race is August. It's sort of okay. So what I usually do is we usually do an 8 out of 10 20-minute TT around this time of year. And it really, like I suggest holding back like just a little harder than endurance pace to start. And then you ramp it up and you ramp it up and you ramp it up. And when you can see the finish line, you can go a little harder if you want. And I don't really care what the average is. And so we get one in the bank. And usually it's rare that one I would say is like 10% off of a best, like, and 10% is a fair bit, right? Like when you think about that, that's like if you're usually 200, it's 180. It's a fair bit. 10% can be a lot. but that's now it's in the bank, right? But that's because we held you back. That was like a pacing thing. It could have been a little motivational. So I don't really stress about that. And then we would expect that the next one you'd know about where you were, it'd be less scary, and then you'd go and you'd do it. So most of the time that's what I see. But if it's like really off, then this is like why we would test as well, is that then okay, well, what are we doing in training? Have we not been training? Is there something weird with the calibration of your trainer, your power meter? Do you need to adjust your firmware? Is it you? Is it the computer? These are the types of questions. And it might be like, oh, well, we need to get back training, right? Like this has been like you're dropping off. Or is there like, are you not motivated? Like sometimes when you're indoors, you're not motivated. Maybe try it outside, or like maybe it doesn't matter or whatever, right? So these would be things to sort of look at. But definitely if we get 2, 3, 4 months of consistent training and then it's still dropping, that would be concerning. And you'd want to look at it like, why has it not even stopped dropping? I don't think that's exactly what they mean, but
right.
Yeah.
Now here's my other addition to that question is like, okay, so this is making me think about race weight. Now, in recent years, we've sort of come to terms with race weight for master cyclists isn't really a thing, right? Like you don't really want to do what the pros do and like gain back 10 pounds at the end of the season and then drop 10 at the beginning of the season for master cyclists. And I forget if maybe it was Dan John, but like the 1 pound extra, like 1 extra pound a year that you can't take back off. Like
yeah, his tongue-in-cheek thing is that like you try and lose 1 pound a year. Once you get into this phase of life where everyone wants to lose 5 pounds, he says, no. Your goal is to try and lose 1 pound because most people actually gain at least 1 pound a year. This is on average, like as people get into middle age and beyond, people will put on a pound, right? And then all of a sudden 30, 40 years later, they're like, oh, I'm 25 pounds overweight, right? And so his thing is, it's a little tongue in cheek. I don't know what you'd necessarily do with it, but that's rather than setting the goal of gaining weight. Yeah.
So I guess like my thing here is we know that race weight no longer really makes sense from like an off-season perspective for masters athletes. So what about like letting your numbers or motivation drop? Does that still make sense for masters athletes?
Sure. Yeah. And so this would be like, do we take an off season, a massive off season? And like you say, they used to go do the Tour de France riders would do cocaine and they'd gain 30 pounds.
You said that. I did not say that.
I'm pretty sure that's what you had. Jan Ulrich, I don't want to throw him under the bus here. I don't know where Jan is in life right now. But yeah, like I think that was the story, right? Like he would come back and he'd be 30 pounds and then he'd race his way back into it. It probably wasn't the greatest strategy. But yeah, that would be the thing is like, that's why we probably only take 2 weeks off. And this is, that we've talked about this before, where it's, if we take our rest days and we take our rest weeks, then at the end of the year, we don't generally need to take 3 months off and do this.
Because even a few years ago, taking 6 weeks off, even for the average like masters athlete, that was sort of a standard practice, or even a couple months.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're like, oh, November through January is the off season. And I think that's actually been really replaced with like couple weeks pretty off at the end of the season, and then you're sort of into base already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see most of the tour riders stuff, it would be maybe 2 weeks. I generally do like 1 week where it's like just stay away from the main sport, and most people will take that. Some people are keen and they'll get back on, but again, this is almost like a little barometer on like, how is everyone doing? How busy is life? How is motivation? Like, no, I always like stress it's not a test. Like you don't have to get back on your bike to prove to me that you're motivated. But where are we at? And then usually we actually do like a deload week that next week. So it's a pretty light week. Maybe there's an assessment or a test of some type that could be on movement, that could be on aerobic capacity, or it could be, a 20-minute test like we were just talking about. But that sort of ends up working to about 2 weeks of like pretty low activity versus to what a lot of these people are doing during the year. And then we sort of get back into it. And again, not super heavy. Those next 4 weeks are also pretty open. We ease into cross training. The volume is not super high. The intensity is not super high. The structure is not super high. But we're back moving and training and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So all that to say, slight decline, no problem. But really, we just don't want to see kind of like a steep drop off, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you sort of want to be, we've talked about this before. I love that Joel Jamieson's the one who his company used to be called 8 Weeks Out. And I just always like that, 6 or 8 weeks out is probably like a good way to think about fitness, where maybe with the exception of, the end of that week off, you'd probably like to have a couple more weeks. But once you get back into training, you want to think, okay, like, can we stay I'm not always fit. I'm not fit for everything, but I am 8 weeks out from being pretty much fit enough to do something, right? Like whatever that is. Now, obvious exception. Like if I'm going to go back and try and beat my Leadville record or something like that, like I would prefer more than 8 weeks. I am not that fit right now. There's a lot more preparation that has to go into some of these big adventures and goals. But that's, I think, a good way to think about it. So when we think about the threshold, if I went and tested today, I'd be pretty sure I'd be 20 watts off. And then if you could give me another 8 weeks, I'm like pretty confident I could get back to whatever it was throughout this year, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
To talk about our friends over at Payable. So if you've ever needed to get paid for something, you don't want to mess around with building a whole fancy web platform, Payable has your back with the Payable add-on, which is to take payments in Google Forms.
That's right. So you have Google Forms, and you can fill out all the information, or your customer can, and then you can get paid. And so what we're doing for this season of Payable Forms ads here on the Consummate Athlete Podcast, we are doing a Payable Form of the week. And so this week we were saying that locally here, we've seen this with a bunch of different races over the years around the world, really. But here close to us, there was a weekly race, and they collected both an annual, like seasons pass for the annual race. So they say they do 16 races. You can pay all bulk right up front, or you can pay per week. And what the organizer would do is they just print off that spreadsheet and they'd bring it to the race. And everyone knew that you there was no cash on site, or I don't recall exactly how they did it, but like they encouraged you to just use this thing so they'd have their spreadsheet, and then they had their piece of paper, and they would just do a pretty basic timing on that spreadsheet. But they also saw like who had paid, and they were all set up. So it was really like very hands off for someone who's doing a little weekly race as a side project to say like, yeah, I'll just print out the spreadsheet, bring it over, and I can, the money's in the bank, so to speak.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more, head to payableapps.com/athlete. We have all of our favorite templates, and you get a discount on payable fees. So definitely check it out. Again, payableapps.com/athlete, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. All right. Last question of the day. Cadence on climbs. What is the optimal cadence range? I'm gonna really shock everyone when I say I think the answer is going to begin with it depends.
Well, and we can maybe give a little shout out our friends over at RLC, which was the Ryan Leach connection. So it's Ryan Leach's mountain bike online skills website. It's a membership site. I think it's pretty affordable, and honestly, there's some great content there. There's courses for things like wheelies and jumping and whatnot, but they actually have a new course that's just come out, and it's called the Tech Climb Technician course, and it really deals with a lot of these questions around making it up tech climbs, and I think it's really great. As a coach, I've never liked teaching cadence or even climbing because they're sort of nebulous. There is no right gear. I can't tell you 3 is the correct gear, or even that for this climb 3 is the correct gear, because there's obviously so many variables: the surface, the person, the fitness, the speed they're coming in with. Today versus tomorrow may be different again, versus your fitness or your skills or the bike you're on. there's just so many factors. So the idea would be to try and find the one that works for the situation, gets you up it, achieves your goals. But that's, as I say, nebulous. So the course does deal with that and has some drills, which aren't rocket science. They're sort of, you point yourself at a big grassy slope and try going into it in any gear, and then go one harder, and then go one harder, and then go one harder, and just notice what happens. How do you bog down where you suddenly can't move the cranks anymore, and then sort of backing out of that and using cadence a bit more, and then also integrates things like standing, which again throws a whole monkey wrench into it once you can stand and sort of keep the gear moving over using more of your body weight and your arms.
So it depends.
Very much.
What it sounds like is, that there really isn't necessarily like one optimal cadence for climbing, because I mean, what you would use to climb a 15-mile Alpe d'Huez or, any of these like really long climb, like a long mountain climb, is obviously going to be very, very different than what you're going to do to get up, 10-second climb, or even just kind of a middle range climb.
Well, and in fact, when someone says like what gear, it says to me that they're not shifting nearly enough.
They said what cadence. Did I say gear? I probably said gear because I don't shift.
Well, the thing is, again, they're connected, right? So in this, you're right. It's probably someone maybe who's been on an indoor trainer and they're thinking, should I be at 80 or 85 RPM? And then again, it's like the wrong question.
Well, this is the danger I find with we get a lot of questions about cadence. And I think there is a danger to talking about optimal cadence because while yes, there are some general rules of thumb for it that I definitely flaunt, I guess, or flout, whatever, ignore. I think the problem is then you think that they need to be applied to everything or that everything is going to have this super optimal cadence. And I'm sure if you're Pogača, there is some kind of optimal cadence for getting up Alpe d'Huez, or if you're PFP, getting up, Col de Madeleine. But for the average person, not so much.
Well, and I just saw one of these mountain bike skills. There's like several. There's like a war right now going on in the mountain bike skills coaching world where there's like new ones and they're like saying the other one's not good, but they're okay with them. But that's a digression. But I saw one of them took a study and said, oh, well, professional mountain bikers average 70 RPM or something like that. And so that's the cadence you should do.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So the problem is with averages, right? The idea that you could drown in a pool of water that was only 1 centimeter deep or something like that, it goes the same, is that an average can be very deceptive. You could have very deep portions to that water and then obviously just like a puddle in other places. And it could then average to be whatever depth, right? So in the same way, the cadence, they probably are hitting, when you watch, especially in XCO professional racing, when they're actually pedaling, a lot of times it's more like 90. It's like same as Pogača or whatever, right? So you just sort of see people cluster that way. The problem with mountain biking is that they're also coasting half the race, and I'm not even exaggerating that. They're probably half the race is coasting, and so it's difficult to take an average out of something like that for sure. So what you're looking for, I guess if we get drilled into this nebulous thing, is that you're looking for an optimal for you, for the situation, for the goals. And so that's more of a feeling, and it's also a result. Do you make it up this thing efficiently, or are you coming off of the wheel in front of you, the person in front of you, or are you not making it all? And that's usually, especially with this, the RLC program, which is now Ride, Learn,
Connect.
Because it is two-way. There are coaches there. You can upload your video, and then we have a conversation, and I do coach on that. So do check out the RLC. We'll link to the Climb Technician, but by joining, you do get access to the wheelie course, the jumping course, and so forth. So with this idea of optimal cadence, you sort of want, I like the phrase, someone told me this a long time ago, that you want the gear that you can like accelerate. So we're going along, but at any point you might come around a corner and be, oh, there's a rock, I need to surge and then stop pedaling for a second to jump up over this rock or hop up a rock, or there's a little bit of wet roots in front of me. I need to accelerate for 2 pedal strokes and then really soft pedal over the roots and then continue on. And what a lot of people end up is they're way too low or way too high in the cadence range. And so the low gear, just like a car, if you were trying to go up a hill in your 5th gear, the fastest gear, but you're going slow in your car, when you try, that's when you mat it. You put the gas pedal all the way down and the car just sort of bogs down. Or if you're in the 1st gear in the car and the engine's revving really, really high and almost squealing, you can't really accelerate once you're already there. Again, you're sort of matted and that gear's spun out. It would be like in cycling, if you were in your easiest, your granny gear, and you tried to accelerate, you're already pedaling way too fast. You can't really go any faster. There's no more RPM range. So you sort of want to, by feeling, be in a gear that you can accelerate, or vice versa, you could also bring it down a little bit. So whatever that range is for you, and usually that does cluster into that, say, 70 to 90 in mountain biking, somewhere in that range. So you spend a lot of time around 80. But then again, as we talked about averages, at the end of the ride, you can't really look and say, oh, I averaged, because you're going to average 60 probably, or maybe the study they had, maybe it's 70 RPM, I don't know, would be the average. That would be high, it strikes me. But probably you see average a lot of time in 60s for a mountain bike ride. But then again, you're going to have periods where you're climbing and that might be at 80 or 85 RPM or something like that, depending on the surface and how fast you're going and all these different things. But you do want to have something that you can almost single speed it while you're in that gear. You can go faster cadence, slower cadence, again, so that you can get traction when you have it to accelerate, and then soft pedal to get over a root, or pause for a second to get hopped up something. So with cadence, especially for off-road, this applies to gravel. That's sort of what you're looking for, as you're sort of in that middle of the range, and then you can sort of work with that gear. And then when you, just like a standard car, if you start seeing that you're grinding down, the hill's getting steeper, and suddenly you're down at 70 or get into the 60 RPMs, that's where you have to shift easier to put yourself back in the middle of that cadence range. So as far as like things you could do, like I think the feeling is really the biggest thing. Like, are you making it? Is it comfortable? Can you get up enough climbs to finish your ride? But you could certainly put cadence really big on your display on your bike computer, and pay attention to, okay, I'm feeling like I'm bogging down. What is the reading? Oh, it's like 65. Okay, shift easier. Okay, it's in the 80s. I like the feeling of this 80. And then by there, you can sort of sort out like what are the numbers that make sense for you, and again, your goals, your fitness, and so forth.
But I guess all of that does come back to feeling. So this kind of gets into the conversation we had a week ago, I believe, where we were talking about if you should look at your power meter while you're doing technical skills practice. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit, is it really worth looking at your cadence thing if you're feeling comfortable? And yes, to just kind of get to know yourself a little bit. For sure, it's great information, but definitely don't get to the point where now you're looking down, and even though you feel comfortable and you feel like you can do all of those things, you're like, oh, but I know last week I did this thing where it said it was 70 and that worked.
Right.
So I'm going 68. I need to go up to 70.
It's a tough one. You know, with cycling, I think you can manipulate the cadence more than, say, running. Running's like a hard one. People will try, but then you end up manipulating form a lot more. So people sort of end up, and then that's always the debate with running is like, when should you manipulate your cadence? So how fast, I mean, it's the same.
Pretty much every other year, there's a new study that comes out that says, do it, don't do it, do it,
right.
Don't do it.
Right. So sometimes with injury, they'll say it is worth playing with it just so that you are sort of varying it a little bit. But if you're doing okay, your performance and your injury status is good, then you would not want to play around with cadence. And that's where people get in trouble, is that some coach or someone will decide that they need to change this person's cadence because it seems a little off from what they think optimal is. But you have to be careful, because it's not clear that will make that person better or have them avoid an injury, given that they are doing okay and avoiding injury where they are. Now in cycling, it's tougher because we do have this machine that we're strapped to that does have gearing. And so you do need to be careful, but I think you're right that like probably you don't want to play too much with it unless it's obvious that you're having trouble making it up climbs, or you're getting dropped. Someone accelerates and you are in one of those scenarios where you're spinning wildly or bogged down and you can't react.
Or pay attention to it. Just don't be so obsessive about the exact number and looking at the number to tell you if you're doing it right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. And I often will use like a mulligan of and again, this is more, is this because this question was specific to climbs or was it just
climbs?
Yeah, which is a little different. Like I think when you're riding along as a cyclist, like there is like an element of efficiency built into that cadence, because
the elephant of efficiency.
So I think normally as people cycle more, you will see that gravitation up into the 80s and towards the 90s for cadence. And then again, there's like that can be taken too far. Like at some point 95 or 100 RPM isn't better than 85 or 90. But there is a period where I do think for someone you need to be careful that they are finding that somewhat optimal where it's not so muscular. And again, they can react and use cadence to accelerate versus using, say, muscle to accelerate or strength to accelerate. You can definitely stomp on your pedals to get the bike moving, but there is an efficiency. Like the reason we have gears is to change that ratio where the thing just moves, right? It's sort of like leverage or is that a good analogy? I don't know. It's like the lever arm. Like if you make the lever arm longer, you don't have to work as hard to lift the thing. If you can think about that, like if you, I don't know, for some reason I'm picturing a fridge on the end of a board, and if you stand really close to the fridge, it's going to be hard to move the fridge. But if we make that lever really, really long, like a little kid could, I guess like a teeter-totter would be the analogy, right? Like your dad sitting on one side of the teeter-totter, and then you need to push down on the other side. But if we keep making the teeter-totter longer and longer, at some point, so that's what gears are, right? That's all that gears are, is changing that ratio and that, so that we can get the weight moved around. So that's why we probably want to think about gearing, so that we don't end up not being able to move the crank. And that's what happens, is it bogs down and bogs down.
Okay, there you have it. Hopefully that physics lesson was helpful.
Well, and if it doesn't, I would check out this RLC Tech Climb Technician course, because they do give you things to actually go out and play with this. And if you are there, I have seen people where it's just their brain does not compute, and they just, either the shifting of the gears or the cadence work just boggles them. I often say that you probably just need to go out and ride your bike and try and not think too much about it and just keep riding till you figure it out. But some people are very analytical, and I think this course has some great things where I hesitate to call them drills, but some exercises, some things you could go and play with your bike on, where you sort of, oh, okay, I get like what this feels like now, where this gear was okay and this one bogged down. This gear was way too fast and this one was just right. And for some folks, I think that's going to be a fantastic thing. The course also has some higher end stuff as well, where we're trying to hop up curbs or hop up ledges on the trail as well. So don't let that discourage you if you are someone who just wants to go flying up tech climbs. It's made for those folks as well.
Awesome. All right. We'll include links to that in the show notes, and keep the questions coming. We want to talk about New Year, goal setting, all that fun stuff, but also any racing, training, nutrition questions as we head into this snowy time of year. You can find us at consummateathlete.com, at consummateathlete on Instagram. And with that, happy training, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.